Ladies and gentlemen, gather round, fellow fans of manhwa and animation. Prepare yourselves for a tale not of the flashiest hunter or the one with the most devastating power, but of the man who held the entire world together while others were busy breaking it. This is the complete life story of Woo Jin-chul, the unsung hero of Solo Leveling, and a character whose journey is as compelling as any main protagonist. Think of your favorite Korean anime. You know the trope. There's the overpowered main character, blazing with energy, and then there's that one surprisingly competent side character who you wish you could see more of. My friends, Woo Jin-chul is that character, but he grabbed the script and refused to stay in the background. Imagine the opening sequence of a classic Korean anime. The camera pans over a modern, sleek cityscape, we hear the pulse-pounding op theme, and we're introduced to our hero, Sung Jin-woo, the underdog who becomes the most overpowered being in existence. His is the story that screams from the panels of the manhwa. But in every great story, for the hero to shine, there must be a foundation, a stage manager working tirelessly behind the velvet curtain. In the first episodes, that was Woo Jin-chul. He wasn't the star, he was, for all intents and purposes, part of the setting. When we first meet him, he is the very definition of a bureaucratic NPC. Impeccably dressed in a suit that symbolizes his place in the system, he carries a clipboard and a demeanor of detached professionalism. He is the vice president of the monitoring division, a title that sounds important but, in the world of S-rank hunters who can level cities, feels almost mundane. His initial role is to deliver information, to assess threats from behind a desk, and to manage the egos of the super-powered individuals the association relies on. He was the system administrator for the chaotic, glitchy game that was the real world, and the hunters were all players who refused to read the terms of service. He existed to give the main character his rank, to deliver warnings, to be a pillar of the establishment that the protagonist would inherently defy. We've seen this character 100 times, the competent but ultimately powerless official who wrings his hands while the real heroes and villains clash. But the magic of Woo Jin-chul's character is that he refused to remain a static piece of world building. The writers, in a brilliant subversion of the trope, began to slowly zoom the camera in on him. We started to see the cracks in his professional facade, not as a sign of weakness, but as a window into immense pressure and competence. The first true hint of his deeper role came with his interactions with Jin-woo. He wasn't just another official, he was the first person in a position of authority to recognize that Jin-woo was an anomaly that couldn't be processed by the association's standard protocols. While others saw a low-ranked hunter getting lucky, Jin-chul saw a variable. He observed, he calculated, and he grew deeply, genuinely concerned. This was no longer a background character reciting lines, this was a sharp, intuitive mind at work. His journey from the background began with this shift from a mere reporter of facts to an active analyst and, crucially, a strategist. He became the bridge between the uncontrollable force of nature that was Sung Jin-woo and the rigid, often clumsy, structure of the Hunter Association. He was the only one who could speak to Jin-woo not as a subordinate or a superior, but as a pragmatic equal, understanding the larger picture in a way no one else could. He managed the unmanageable, and in doing so, he carved out a unique and indispensable space for himself in the narrative. The true turning point, the moment he fully stepped out of the background and into the glowing spotlight of the main cast, was his own awakening. This wasn't a random power-up bestowed by the plot, it was an evolution earned through sheer exposure and necessity. Constantly being in the presence of Jin-woo's overwhelming, monarch-level energy acted as a catalyst, forcing his own latent senses to sharpen and evolve into a tangible power. He became a living, breathing radar for catastrophe. When he stood on the front lines, sensing the approach of the monarchs while others remained blissfully unaware, he was no longer a supporting character. In that moment, he was a frontline defender of humanity, his unique ability making him as critical as any S-rank brawler. He became the audience's anchor, the relatable human reacting to the godlike powers unfolding before him. We saw his hands tremble, his breath catch, his body scream in protest against the pressure of immense power. Yet, his feet remained firmly planted. His resolve never broke. This combination of very human fear and superhuman will is the hallmark of a main character. By the story's end, Woo Jin-chul had transcended his role completely. He was no longer just the man from the association, he was Jin-woo's most trusted ally in the human world, a commander of the new generation of hunters, and a legendary figure in his own right. He didn't just join the main cast, he proved that the foundation upon which a hero stands can be just as heroic, and his journey from a man with a clipboard to a pillar of humanity's defense remains one of the most compelling and satisfying arcs in the series. In the high-stakes, power-scaled universe of Korean anime and manhwa, we are often mesmerized by the dazzling spectacle of ultimate attacks and shattered landscapes. Characters scream, power levels skyrocket, and the fate of the world hangs in the balance on a weekly basis. It's a symphony of glorious, unbridled chaos, and in the midst of this symphony, someone has to be the conductor. That someone, the unwavering pillar of order, was Woo Jin-chul. Imagine the Hunter Association as a massive, complex corporation suddenly tasked with managing a roster of employees who are essentially walking natural disasters. These employees, the S-rank hunters, are volatile, egotistical, and often more concerned with personal glory and guild rivalries than with any cohesive strategy. They are the embodiment of chaos, each a powerful solo act refusing to play in an orchestra. Into this maelstrom steps Jin-chul, not as a fellow diva, but as the steadfast stage manager and, eventually, the unflappable conductor. While others were focused on their solo performances, he was the only one reading the entire score, aware of how every note, every instrument, needed to come together to prevent the entire piece from collapsing into cacophony. His strength was never merely his later developed sensory power, it was his preternatural calm. In a room where S-rank hunters could shift the atmosphere with a flick of their intent, Jin-chul's presence was a grounding force. He was the adult in the room. When the Japanese hunters arrived with their condescension and hidden agendas, it was Jin-chul who managed the diplomatic tightrope. When the Reaper, Wang Dong-su, acted out with murderous intent, it was Jin-chul who contained the situation with authority and cold pragmatism, not with brute force, but with the unshakable weight of his position and his will. He didn't need to scream to be heard, his quiet, measured tone cut through the noise because it was always backed by impeccable logic and an unassailable command of the facts. This role required a superhuman level of competence that went beyond battle prowess. It was a competence of the mind and spirit. He was a bureaucrat, a strategist, a diplomat, and a psychologist all rolled into one. He had to anticipate political fallout, manage public perception, allocate resources for nationwide disasters, and somehow corral the most powerful and unpredictable individuals on the planet. He was the human glue holding a superhuman world together. While Sung Jin-woo was the sword that would slay the dragon, Woo Jin-chul was the shield that protected the village from the ensuing panic, the economic collapse, and the political infighting that the dragon's very existence caused. His evolution into this role is what makes him so compelling. He didn't start as a pillar, he became one through relentless dedication and an unparalleled work ethic. Every crisis, from the dual dungeon breach to the emergence of the architect, was another weight placed upon his shoulders, and with each one, he did not buckle, he grew stronger, more resolute. His eventual sensory ability was merely the physical manifestation of the role he had already been fulfilling for years, the early warning system for humanity. He felt the tremors of coming disasters so that others could have time to prepare. He stood on the wall, feeling the approach of the monarchs, his body trembling but his spirit unbroken, a solitary sentinel against the impending storm. In that moment, he was no longer just an administrator, he was the embodiment of human order staring down cosmic chaos, and his unwavering stance ensured that when the heroes flew into battle, there was still a world left for them to defend. He was the foundation, and as any builder will tell you, the strength of the entire structure depends entirely on the integrity of its foundation. In the vibrant and often explosive world of Korean anime, power-ups are a common currency. A hero stumbles into a hidden dungeon, inherits a divine system, or awakens a latent bloodline ability that catapults them to the top of the food chain. It's a thrilling fantasy, the narrative equivalent of winning the supernatural lottery. Woo Jin-chul's journey, however, follows a different, far more relatable and satisfying path. His strength wasn't a sudden windfall, it was a long-term investment in himself, paid for with relentless effort and sharp observation. Think of him not as a lottery winner, but as a master craftsman. While others were being handed fantastical weapons, Jin-chul was in the background, diligently honing his own tools. His initial power was his intellect and his unwavering professionalism. He mastered the complex bureaucracy of the Hunter Association, understood the intricate politics between guilds, and learned to predict the volatile behavior of S-rank hunters. This was his first form of training, a mental and strategic montage happening entirely off-screen. He didn't have the luxury of a system granting him stat points, he built his own database of knowledge and tactical understanding through sheer experience. His eventual, tangible power the sensory ability to detect immense sources of mana, was not a random mutation. It was the logical, almost inevitable, result of his environment and his own will. His constant, close-quarters exposure to Sung Jin-woo, a being whose power defied all known metrics, acted as the ultimate crucible. It was like a blacksmith repeatedly thrusting a piece of steel into an inferno. The ordinary material was forced to adapt or shatter. Jin-chul's latent senses, already sharpened by years of analysis and assessment, were tempered and forged in this relentless pressure. He didn't simply awaken, he acclimated. His body and spirit, through a painful and arduous process, learned to process and interpret energies that would have broken a lesser man. This method of earning power is what makes his ascent so profoundly compelling. There is no cheat code, no mysterious benefactor. There is only dedication meeting opportunity. His growth mirrors the real-world ethos of success. It is the product of consistency, resilience, and being prepared when a rare chance presents itself. He was a dedicated student of his world long before he became one of its powerful players. When he finally stands alongside the main cast, his presence feels earned in a way that is distinct from the protagonists chosen by fate. He is not the chosen one, he is the one who chose to become stronger, who used his mind as his primary weapon until his very senses evolved to keep pace with his resolve. His power is a testament to the idea that true strength isn't just about the destination of immense power, but about the integrity and grit demonstrated on the journey to attain it. In any grand narrative filled with world-ending threats and godlike beings, a chasm inevitably forms. On one side, you have the raw, untamable power of the heroes and villains who operate on a scale beyond human comprehension. On the other, you have the fragile, complex systems of society, the governments, the militaries, the everyday people just trying to survive. This chasm can be as destructive as any monster, and in the world of solo leveling, Woo Jin-chul became the one who built a bridge across it. He was the ultimate diplomat, the human interpreter for the superhuman, a vital conduit between two realities that were rapidly drifting apart. His position was uniquely precarious. To the Hunter Association and the Korean government, he was their foremost expert and primary point of contact for their most valuable and volatile asset, Sung Jin-woo. They needed answers, assessments, and some semblance of control. Jin-chul's role was to translate Jin-woo's incomprehensible actions into actionable reports and strategic forecasts. He didn't sugarcoat the truth, but he framed it in a way that the bureaucratic machine could process, preventing panic and enabling, or at least, not obstructing, Jin-woo's necessary missions. He was the buffer that absorbed the political shockwaves of every impossible feat Jin-woo performed. Conversely, for Sung Jin-woo, Jin-chul was the one official who wasn't a hindrance. Jin-woo, whose power isolated him from all of humanity, found in Jin-chul a point of contact who required no lengthy explanations. Jin-chul's keen intellect and later, his sensory abilities, meant he could often understand the scope of a threat or the nature of Jin-woo's actions without a single word being exchanged. He was the only person from the old world who could step into Jin-woo's new world and not be completely lost. He managed Jin-woo not with authority, which would be futile, but with respect, professionalism, and a shared understanding of the larger threats at play. This bridging role extended beyond just one man. He was the interface between the chaotic, glory-driven guilds and the association's need for national security. He was the link between international hunter organizations, facilitating cooperation during global crises without succumbing to jingoistic pride. He operated in the narrow, often invisible space where power meets policy, ensuring that the two didn't collide catastrophically. When the monarchs arrived, it was Jin-chul who felt them first, sounding the alarm for humanity. In that moment, he was no longer just a bureaucrat or a manager, he was a vital sensory organ for the entire human race, the bridge that carried a warning from the realm of the gods to the world of men, buying the precious seconds that would ultimately decide the fate of everything. He was the keystone in the arch, the element that, if removed, would have caused both sides to collapse into disarray and misunderstanding.